It wouldn't be a London derby without a heap of controversy, but in and amongst the debate was another WSL classic. Chelsea held Arsenal to a 1-0 draw at the Emirates and lost their lead of the WSL. So in this analysis, I break down what went wrong for Chelsea, how Arsenal forced their way back into the game, and ultimately who deserved to win the match. But before we can look at where it went wrong for Chelsea, let's start with what went well for the Blues, because weirdly, in all of the media coverage around this game, it seems to have been completely forgotten. In the first half, Chelsea actually played very well. So I want to look at that because I think Chelsea had more possession in the first half. They created significantly more expected goals with 1.66 XG generated, and they had 2 big chances missed in those first 16 minutes. And so I want to talk about that before we can look at what went wrong. So the first thing I want to show is this chance for Johanna Rytting at Kaneryd. Now Chelsea building up from the back here, and it comes into Millie Bright, and later in this half, every pass into Millie Bright didn't really work out, but in this instance, it does. And what Chelsea do here is something they've done a lot this season. It's something I've analysed a lot, is when this pass goes into Cuthbert, immediately take a look at where the Chelsea players are in this equation and where the Arsenal players are. Because what Chelsea are looking to do, and they did this against Manchester City, is they draw in the opposition press, and you can see 5 Arsenal players here, all in this segment of the field. They draw in the Arsenal press and then they play through it. And you can see here a couple bounce passes between Charles, then back to Millie Bright. Bright then looking forwards for another pass. And you can just see Chelsea wearing Arsenal down, waiting for the option to happen. And then Cuthbert releases it. And as Cuthbert releases this across to Bjorn, you can see 4 Arsenal players here completely drawn out of the press. Now Natalie Bjorn picks up the ball and she looks to drive it forwards here. She carries that ball through the lines of pressure and she releases it to the right hand side. And this is now through that first line of Arsenal pressure, and Chelsea pushing forward. Bronze has acres to work with on this right-hand side, and she uses it very well. Bronze drives this ball forward. A little bit clunky on the right-hand side, doesn't quite work out how they would want it to, but Chelsea still fashion opportunity from this because of Kat Macario. So watch here. As Bronze receives the ball, look at Kat Macario's movement, and look at all the space in between Arsenal's left centre-half and left back. There is so much space there, so look at the players in this example. We can see Caitlin Ford's the one tracking the run of Kaneryd there. We can see McCabe's gone out to press Bronze. Now they're probably the wrong way around anyway. And then these centre-backs are way too narrow, and this gives so much space for Macario to drop into this area. And we can see receives the pass well, knocks it around the corner, and now Kaneryd is in. And this is a lovely move from Chelsea. Kaneryd tucks past the goalkeeper, and that should be 1-0. That's a fantastic move. 0.59 XG chance created from a lovely move from Chelsea. Arguably the best combination from either side in the game and the best chance for either side in this game. Kaneryd should have scored. Very unfortunate that doesn't go past Van Domslaar. Comes off the post and no one can react on the rebound. But this was the first sign of Chelsea's quality in the opening stages. And we saw this similarly at the Emirates last season. What Chelsea wanted to do in this game and what they executed successfully last year was they wanted to start really fast, start really aggressively, on the front foot, get those 2 early goals. Last season they scored in the 4th and the 16th minute. This season they had opportunities in the 2nd minute. They scored then in the 8th minute, as we'll get onto. And they had another chance as well around the 16th minute. Those go in, it's a completely different game. And that was what Chelsea set out to do in this match. They wanted to start fast and score early. And now we fast forward to the Alyssa Thompson goal. We can see similarly it starts with Chelsea building out from the back. So it's Hannah Hampton on the ball here, and she's got options to the left-hand side. And again, she goes to Millie Bright. And at this moment in time, Arsenal's pressure is very different to how it changes. We'll look in a moment at what changes, but Arsenal in this moment aren't as aggressive in the press as they need to be against Chelsea, and it makes it too easy for the Blues to play through. And so what we see is this patient build-up between Hampton and Bright. Bright now is able to step up, and already Chelsea have gained a little bit of territory here, more than Arsenal probably should have let them do. And again, we see this tidy combination between a few players. They're looking to draw Arsenal in, and then that is a fantastic pass from Kira Welsh. She punches it through into Alyssa Thompson, and now Thompson receives the ball on the half turn. And immediately, what's happened there again is that Arsenal have been drawn into the press, Chelsea have played through it, and now Alyssa Thompson is driving forward. We can already see here, Chelsea are now building a numerical overload, because as Thompson drives forward here, you can see she gets past Mariona Caldente and shifts it out to the right-hand side. This is really good then from Alyssa Thompson to crack that run. She follows it on to Kaneryd. Kaneryd brings it under her control. And then what we can see here is that Kaneryd gives it back to Thompson. And this finish from Alyssa Thompson to loop it over the goalkeeper is really tight. It's a really nice move from Chelsea. It's not an incredibly well-created chance for Thompson to score from that position, but she does really well to loop it over the goalkeeper from that area. Should Van Domslaar do better? Probably. I think she expects it to float over the bar. But what we're seeing from this 8th minute goal, from the chance in the 2nd minute, is Chelsea playing through Arsenal with what is relative ease. What they're doing very well is knocking the ball around in their own areas, inviting Arsenal into press, and then playing into the space that's left behind it. It's really effective from Chelsea, and it's why, after 8 minutes, they have the lead. Now, the Kaptein chance wasn't quite as precise in build-up, so it starts here with Hampton again. Now, Arsenal pressing a lot more aggressively this time, and this is exactly what they had to do, because it forces this long ball from Hampton. And obviously, Chelsea make it work from this position, and that is important to note. But what this stops is Arsenal being able to be played through quite as easily. It forces Chelsea to go a little bit more direct, and without someone who's really area dominant up front, Kaneryd can win a header, of course, but you would expect the centre-backs to be stronger in those positions. Forcing Chelsea to go direct is really important. So they do that very well here. Hampton sends it forward, but it actually drops into midfield. And this gives Chelsea a little bit more of an opportunity to win it. And they fight away for possession. It spills out to the left-hand side. And Katie McCabe, I think, horribly misjudges this ball. And she gets done by the bounce. It drops then into the path of Bronze. McCabe goes to square her up. And this is really poor defending from Katie McCabe. And actually, McCabe and Bronze are remarkably similar when you watch them play, in the fact that they are both great coming forwards, great driving the ball forwards. But defensively, they do this all the time. We saw this with Bronze later in the game against Ford. We see it with McCabe here. They dive into the challenges. McCabe dives in here. It's way too predictable. Bronze nutmegs her, and Bronze is now way down the right-hand side. And again, we've seen already how Chelsea can use that width very effectively. It's a good pass into Macario. Macario in this game was excellent as a hold-up player, as someone that they could put play balls into. She'll hold it up and bring others into the game. In this example, she's being fouled quite blatantly from Lotte Wubben-Moy, but she shrugs it off, uses her physicality very well, and gets the shot away at goal. Now, I want to pause it there as the shot is parried up in the air. Van Domselaar has to do better with her save here. Just to push it up in the air isn't enough. You either got to give it a very good push to get it up and over the bar and out of danger, or you've got to push it out. You've got to push it away from your goal. Instead, she pushes it up, ends up hitting the crossbar, and it creates this melee where Wieke Kaptein really should score there. She heads it straight to Daphne Van Domselaar. That should go in. 0.69 XG chance not converted. So in that first 14 minutes of play there, we've seen the Kaptein chance where she's practically on the goal line, not able to head it back into the back of the net. We've seen the Alyssa Thompson goal, and we've seen the Kaneryd chance, which was very unfortunate to hit the post. And so in that first 15 minutes, Arsenal barely had a kick. It was a deliberate approach from Chelsea. They wanted to start fast, they wanted to score goals, and they wanted to kill the game off early. They were very unlucky that that didn't happen in these early stages, because they had the opportunities. Arsenal didn't react quick enough to the way that Chelsea were playing, and they had the chances to kill this game off. It was a mirror of last season, as I mentioned earlier, where Chelsea won that game 2-1. They scored the 2 early goals, and they went more defensively, and they held on to the game on that occasion. I think that this is exactly how Chelsea want to play. They generate those transitional moments. They know Arsenal weak in transition, and it worked out really nicely. So how did Arsenal force their way back into the game? Well, in the first half, they had fleeting opportunities. Their only real joy was from 2 different sources. One was Chelsea kept playing the ball to Millie Bright, and she just felt really slow, and Arsenal kept pressing aggressively. That first 15 minutes that we just analysed, Arsenal were too hesitant, I think, in the press. They were too bystanderish in their approach. After that, they started to be a lot more aggressive, and they made it more difficult for Millie Bright. Bright needs time on the ball. She's not as quick as she used to be. And yeah, Arsenal were able to press that very aggressively. They kept generating those high turnovers. And it was a shame, I think, that Arsenal didn't really do anything with those. They kept winning the ball back and didn't ever do anything with it. They should have had better opportunities from there. But that's a bit of a theme for Arsenal in the first half, and actually throughout this game, was a bit of a problem with chance creation. It's been a problem throughout this season, but until they brought Olivia Smith onto the pitch, they didn't really create anything of note. Their only other success was playing it down the left-hand side, where Caitlin Ford was able to take on Lucy Bronze with consistent success. Every time she ran at Bronze, Bronze would dive in, get done, and Caitlin Ford was in. And again, probably should have done better with some of those opportunities. I don't think this was a confident Caitlin Ford. She still had the better of Lucy Bronze, but I think a confident Caitlin Ford would have either picked someone out in the penalty area or would have cut inside and scored herself. So she wasn't on her A game in this match, Caitlin Ford. She still had the better of Lucy Bronze consistently. And that's something that I think Bompastor should have considered with team selection. Looking back at last year's game, Bronze constantly got undone by Caitlin Ford. So to not notice that, to stick with Bronze in this game, especially when she's just back from injury, I thought was a little bit weird, and we saw the same problems. But Bronze was also very integral to Chelsea pushing up the field, so it makes sense in that regard. In the second half, it started to change up a little bit more. Chelsea did come out in the second half stronger. They had a flurry of shots, and that first 10 minutes, they looked to be on it. from there, Arsenal started to come into their own a little bit more. Chelsea definitely went more defensive in their approach. They stopped coming forward with much danger. And I think Arsenal became a lot more proactive in how they were looking to press the ball and how they were looking to progress the ball. There's a lot more urgency to their play, and that made life very difficult for Chelsea. And it was sparked by one moment, and a moment that a lot of people have called an injustice. It's a Sonia Bompastor disallowed goal. This was Arsenal's first real chance of the game. It came from the corner. I'm absolutely willing to admit that was wrongly disallowed. I don't think there's any other conclusion from it. How that was given as a handball, it was an absolute howler of a decision. Now, as I say, I don't want to spend this video talking about referee's decisions. We've already done a video looking at all the decisions in that game and discussing them in detail. So go and check out the weekend roundup if you want to see that. This is just to talk about tactics. But the relevance of the Blackstenius goal was that it was a bit of a change in game state, and not a literal change because it doesn't change the actual scoreline, but for a moment it did, and that I think changed the mentality for Arsenal. It lit a fire under them. In fact, Slegers even described it after the game as positive fuel for Arsenal. I think that was evident in their play. They started to come forwards with a lot more confidence. I think especially once they brought Olivia Smith onto the pitch, they brought on Chloe Kelly as well. I don't think she had any impact, but she was driving the ball forwards more. Olivia Smith, though, incredibly dangerous. Chelsea started to go more defensive. They tried to slow the game down. Arsenal had a lot of the ball in the second half, struggled to really create anything clear-cut. And then the next big change happened when Chelsea went to a back five. And this, for me, I'm not sure it's the right decision. I think if you're going to go to the back five, you do it at half-time. I think the way that Bompastor tried to do it was two on the fly. I think that the way that Chelsea then adjusted to the back five wasn't correct, and it was actually to Chelsea's detriment. It made it too easy for Arsenal to hold possession unopposed and look to play that ball forwards and dictate the tempo from there. And Chelsea almost sat back waiting for Arsenal to come onto them, and that was a problem for Chelsea as they moved into more of a back five shape. I mean, they're still pressing up with Baltimore getting forwards, but when they defend, Baltimore's dropping deep, and they definitely looked a lot deeper than perhaps they needed to be in this game. It's like Chelsea were waiting, as I say, for Arsenal to come onto them. So that takes us on to the Alessia Russo goal. And this all comes from Olivia Smith being the difference maker. So I'm starting this from Marnham winning this ball here. Bright steps up, gets absolutely done. No idea what Millie Bright is trying to do in the situation, but it invites pressure onto the Chelsea backline. Smith's released down the right-hand side, and this is excellent from Olivia Smith. She squares up to Niamh Charles. Charles is a little unfortunate in the way that she slips over, but that's because she's committed to a challenge that she probably shouldn't. The ball then comes into the penalty area, and this is terribly dealt with by Chelsea. The ball bounces around, no one really knows what to do with it. It's cleared a bit haphazardly. Players are jumping in front of shots, getting blocks in the way. It drops for Taylor Hines. That's when the Arsenal attack breaks down for the moment. But it's reignited by Chelsea because it drops here to Orion Jean-Francois. And I cannot explain why she's decided to hook this back over her head and into danger. It's an absolute howler of a decision to make, is to hook that back towards your own defenders. And what Arsenal do from here is they capitalise. Walsh then can't really get the head up far enough away, and then Jean-Francois loses the header, and it drops here for Frida Marnham. And this ball from Frida Marnham is absolutely ridiculous. She, from the corner of her eye, spots the run of Alessia Russo, and she's able to pick out this pinpoint ball. It's ridiculously good from Marnham. Russo then with the finish. Hannah Hampton absolutely should do better with this one. She should push out of her goal. Russo, also worth saying, was in an offside position. I think, again, though, for me, that is cancelled out by the Blackstenius one, so I have no issues there. I think it's this, if I've said this argument a lot, and we'll talk about it more in the far segment, but I think if VAR's in this game, it's the same outcome as 1-1. The only difference is that Palova wouldn't have been on the pitch. So, again, I don't think the refereeing discourse is too important to the actual game, but Hampton should have saved this one. Russo in offside position, but again, I think it cancels out the earlier one for Blackstenius. After this, Chelsea push up, and it comes then to the Arsenal counter-attack. Arsenal break away. Frida Marnham is released in behind. She dinks it over the goalkeeper. It's a really nice finish, and it's offside. I think it's incredibly tight, but it does look offside to me. And again, this, I think, was a fair decision. Again, I think the referee didn't really get anything wrong on this one. But the big decisions cancel out each other for me. The Russo and the Blacksenius one cancel out each other. The Palova red card, it should have been a red card. Again, you get that with VAR. But broadly, what happened in this game was Chelsea in the first half looked to go and put pressure on Arsenal, looked to play with the ball, and they played incredibly good football. They had the opportunities to kill the game off, and they didn't. Second half, Arsenal then were invited into the game by Chelsea, and they took full advantage of that. They had opportunities, and they should have scored more, but they struggled again with chance creation. Once again, their chances came from Chelsea mistakes. Even in the first half, the mistakes were Bronze being all over the place with Caitlin Ford. That's how they were then able to create chances, and Bright not being able to, or being too slow on the ball. So Arsenal have got to address that key chance creation problem, and they addressed it a little bit when Smith came onto the pitch. She was definitely more of a live wire than anyone else they had on there, but they still didn't create anything clear cut, and the XG totals of Chelsea had significantly higher XG than Arsenal did in this game. So that just leaves one question left for this video. Who deserved to win the game? It's the most important question. It's the one that's been most furiously debated across social media and actually traditional media in the last few days. So let's discuss first the semantics of the word, because a lot of people are saying, oh, Arsenal deserved it, Chelsea deserved it. I want us to start by discussing what I mean by deserved. And for me, deserved is who created the better chances, who played the better football. Of course, refereeing decisions play into it. Again, my argument would be that if you put VAR, if you get all of the referee decisions correct in this game, the Mana one's incredibly tight, but for me that is still offside. So if you get all the refereeing decisions correct in this game, the result is the same. The only difference is that Palova would have been sent off. So, in my opinion, the refereeing doesn't matter to the same extent. Of course, we have to address that Blacksenius' disallowed goal was an absolute howler of a decision. Of course, we have to address that. That is important to talk about, and that's important to talk about when regarding to refereeing standards. But in terms of discussing this game, the impact on the result is minimal because of the Russo goal counting, which was an offside goal. So for me, that cancels each other out. So when we talk about deserving the game, it's who played the better football, who created the chances to score. And for me, Chelsea created those chances. Chelsea just lacked the ruthlessness again, but they had the opportunities. In the first half, this easily could have been 3-0 Chelsea. And I think this has been strangely forgotten in a lot of the rhetoric from the media. I found it bizarre in how the game has been covered by the wider media. I looked through for anyone talking about the match. I have yet to find a single article where people actually talk about what happened in the game. Instead, it's all focused on the refereeing decisions. And of course, then, the refereeing decision is going to be the most important thing if we make it the most important thing. But I think if you watch the game of football and you actually watch the game of football, you didn't just watch the refereeing decision, because I think that's what a lot of people who are talking about it seem to have done. If you actually watch the game of football, it was a first half where Chelsea created a lot of chances and just didn't take their opportunities, but they played some really nice football and were unlucky not to score. And the second half, they definitely went more defensive, and Arsenal had chances in the second half. They definitely played better in the second half, Arsenal. But I find it really hard to argue that Arsenal deserved to win this game. I think you only make that argument if you didn't watch the game of football. Or, of course, if you're an Arsenal fan, I absolutely understand why you would make that argument. You're an Arsenal fan. But I think from an objective standpoint, Chelsea created the better chances. Chelsea had the chances to score in this game, and they lacked ruthlessness. And it has been a problem for Chelsea this season. We saw it in the 20 game. We saw it in the United game. They're the only two games that they've drawn outside of this Arsenal match. The rest have all been wins this season. But in those crucial games, we have seen Chelsea miss opportunities. In the 20 game, Wieke Kaptein had a chance. In the United game, Wieke Kaptein had a chance. And then in the Arsenal game, Wieke Kaptein had a chance, and Kaneryd. And this isn't a hit piece on Wieke Kaptein. The reason she keeps having those opportunities is because she's getting in the right positions. And there are other players that are to blame. I mean, Beaver Jones had a huge opportunity missed in that Manchester United game. That makes a big difference. And Chelsea have lacked the ruthlessness throughout this season. And this is why, when people talk about Chelsea playing more boring football, I just disagree. I think the difference to this season for Chelsea to last season is that Chelsea just aren't scoring all their opportunities. I think the brand of football isn't too dissimilar. Of course, there's been slight changes. I think Chelsea have aimed to go a little bit more defensive in games this season, but I also think they've been more vulnerable at the back in other games this season. The difference is Chelsea haven't taken their opportunities. If they score those goals in the United game, it's 3-1. If they score in the 20 game in moments where they should have scored, that's 2-1, maybe even 3-1. If they score their chance in this game, it's 3-1. And rather than it being boring Chelsea play bad football and get away with it, the media rhetoric would be Chelsea are boring, but they keep winning by high score lines. And I think it's interesting. And the reason that people will be calling Chelsea boring is because they keep winning all the games. I find it interesting. I just think it's more about how the media cover the game and how fans respond to the match. I completely agree the refereeing standard wasn't there on Saturday. We spoke about that on the Tuesday video on the weekend roundup. That is absolutely a problem, but that doesn't impact for me because of how the decisions played out. That doesn't impact the scoreline for me. So yeah, interesting game. I think it's worth having a discussion. Please get involved in the comments down below. I want to hear from people on both sides of the divide. I think it's worth saying I am a Chelsea fan. I'm not going to hide behind the fact that there may be a slight bias to my opinion, but I also believe as an analyst that I have taken an objective view of this game. But if you do disagree, please let's have a constructive criticism in the comment section down below. Let's have a conversation about the game because that's what I love doing. I love talking about the actual game, and I found it so boring this week that all of the rhetoric, all of the media, all of the discourse around this game has been about the refereeing decisions. So let's talk about the football, and in my opinion, Chelsea played the better football. So that is everything for today's video. I hope you have enjoyed. If you have, then make sure to leave a like, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you are new, and join us tomorrow evening for the live stream, or actually tonight when this goes out. Bayern taking on Arsenal in the Champions League. We'll be live for that game, and I'll be live this weekend as Chelsea take on Liverpool and as Arsenal take on Tottenham. So if you're a fan of either side, we've got a lot of live streams coming your way for those clubs, so look out for those over the weekend. And of course the Manchester derby on Saturday as well. That though is everything from me today. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.